Thank you, Chair. It's great to be back at OGGO after an unusually long hiatus. And Mr. Jiglick, thank you for the incredible work you're doing on behalf of Canadians, bringing to light these various significant problems in our procurement system. Your report talks about favoritism in terms of the government's treatment of McKinsey, how they favored McKinsey, how they structured systems in order to give contracts to this favorite consulting company of the Prime Minister. McKinsey benefited from this favoritism. And based on the previous work of this committee, it's clear how this happened. Dominic Barton was brought in to chair the Prime Minister's Growth Council at the same time as he was the managing partner at McKinsey. McKinsey analysts did so-called pro bono work for the Growth Council. Andrew Pickersgill, who ran the Canadian operations, supplied the analysts to do the pro bono work. But while he was supplying McKinsey analysts to do supposedly helpful pro bono work for this Growth Council that was chaired by Dominic Barton, he was also selling to the government. And so you have this process where Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Dominic Barton are kind of making this connection at the top between McKinsey and the Government of Canada, and then that is clearly filtering out over time throughout the whole system, where the connection at the top was shaping and impacting the kind of procurement that was happening across government to work to the advantage of McKinsey. That led to the establishment of the National Master Standing Officer. I want to ask, just in terms of the analysis you did, about specific individuals involved and what roles they played in getting these things established. So could you speak to Dominic Barton and Andrew Pickersgill, for example, and where they showed up along the way in terms of looking at how this favoritism manifests itself?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So in our review, those names, to my knowledge, did not come up. I'll look to Derek just to confirm, but my belief is that those names did not come up.
I can confirm that Dominic Barton's name did not appear. Andrew Pickersgill, I'd have to go back and review their documentation, but I don't recall seeing that just off the top of my head, but I can come back to you with that information.
Okay, if you could provide some follow-up information in writing about some of the specific individuals. I'm not at all surprised in the sense of Dominic Barton, because I see that connection having been made at the top between the Prime Minister and him, but the selling process happened by Andrew Pickersgill bringing in these analysts. It was the relationship that happened at the top between the Prime Minister and the leadership at McKinsey that then allowed this favoritism to take place. We know as well that there's been a lot of kind of interplay between senior Liberal offices and McKinsey. There's a former member of Parliament in the government caucus that was a former manager at McKinsey. We've had former staff members from the government go to work for McKinsey. What kind of information were you able to identify around sort of political involvement, decisions made by ministers, by ministerial staff that were part of this sort of broader culture of favoritism for McKinsey?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So in the report, we found one example of where a minister approved a contract. It was an ESDC contract. I believe the question came up before you entered the room, but essentially what happened in that circumstance was it was as a result of an internal delegation document within the department that required that contract due to the value to go to the minister for approval. So that was with Minister Tassi for approval. But that would be the only example in our report where we saw any action on the part of a political actor.
Okay, thank you. One of the other issues that frequently comes up with McKinsey is questions of conflict of interest, how McKinsey works for governments and then also works with people who deal with governments. For instance, they work for health regulators, and then they've also famously, tragically worked for certain manufacturers of opioids. In your work, did you see clear instances where they were doing work, for instance, for Health Canada, for other entities in government, where they were also working for companies that the government regulates? I appreciate, part of the difficulty is they have not been willing to give even this committee a client list when requested. But were you able to identify instances of those kinds of conflicts?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. So I can answer no, but that's because we weren't looking for that specifically.
Well, just in the time I have left, I just reiterate how important it is, and I think there hasn't been the agreement that I would have hoped for in the past, but how important it is that this committee gets the documents that it had previously requested. There previously had been agreement to order, and we hadn't been able to get in the past.
Thank you, sir.